Stephen Miller had always been considered the perfect example of stability. At 52, he had built a life that many envied in the quiet city of Bremen in northern Germany. Married for 28 years to Petra Muller, a respected math teacher in the community, Stephen was the father of 2 children. Lucas, 26, a newly graduated engineer, and Emma, 23, who was studying medicine at the University of Hamburg. The Mullers' life was comfortable and predictable. Stephen worked as a senior manager for an international logistics company, a position he had held for over 15 years. His reputation was impeccable: punctual, dedicated, always available to solve problems. On weekends, he devoted himself to the garden of his home in a residential neighborhood near Burger Park, where he grew roses that won awards in local competitions. Petra organized her life around her family and work. Her math classes were known for turning uninterested students into number enthusiasts. In the evenings after dinner, she and Stephen used to watch documentaries about history or nature, sharing a bottle of red wine. It was a marital choreography rehearsed over nearly 3 decades. But in March 2019, invisible cracks began to form in this facade of perfection. It all started with a business trip. Stephen needed to oversee the opening of a new distribution center in Hamburg, which meant spending 3 weeks away from home. Petra wasn't surprised. Business trips were part of the routine. She kissed her husband at the airport, wished him good luck, and returned home where she planned to use her free time to grade tests and reorganize the closet. What Petra didn't know was that Stephen wasn't in Hamburg. He had boarded a flight to Tunis, the capital of Tunisia. 3 months earlier, during a sleepless winter night, Stephen had downloaded an app from an international dating site. He couldn't explain exactly why. Perhaps it was the boredom of a life that was too predictable. Perhaps the feeling that his best years were behind him. Perhaps the silent frustration of a marriage that had turned into a passionless companionship. At first, Stephen just browsed through the profiles without interacting. It was like watching a movie about other possible lives. But then one January afternoon he saw Amira Hassan's profile. The photo showed a 28-year-old woman with expressive brown eyes and a smile that seemed genuinely joyful. Her description was simple: French teacher in Tunis. I love literature, art, and getting to know new cultures. I'm looking for a real connection, not superficiality. Stephen wrote a simple message. Hello Amira. Your profile caught my attention. I also value authentic connections. What is life like in Tunis? The reply came within a few hours, and so began a correspondence that quickly became the most exciting part of Stephen's day. Amira was intelligent, cultured, funny. She talked about Arabic poetry, the colors of the Mediterranean, her dreams of seeing Europe. She shared photos of vibrant markets, sunsets over ancient ruins, Tunisian dishes she had prepared. Stephen found himself telling her things he hadn't shared with Petra in years. He talked about his rebellious youth, about old dreams of traveling the world, about the feeling of being stuck in a life he hadn't consciously chosen, but into which he had simply slipped. You seem like a man with a lot to offer, Amira wrote after a few weeks. But I feel like you're hiding behind obligations. Life is too short not to live our truth. Those words echoed in Stephen like a calling. For the first time in decades he felt like someone really saw him. Not as a provider, not as a father, not as a model employee, but as Stephen, a man with his own desires and dreams. Their conversations became more intimate. Amira began making video calls, always at times when Petra was at work. She appeared in elegant clothes, sometimes traditional Tunisian, sometimes modern and Western. Her voice was soft with a French accent that Stephen found charming. You're different from the men here, Amira would say. Educated, kind, successful. Men like that are rare. My family is very traditional. They pressure me to marry someone they've chosen. But I want to choose my own path, you know. Stephen saw himself in the role of savior. Here was an intelligent, beautiful woman trapped by outdated traditions who saw in him a possibility of freedom. It was seductive. It was dangerous. It was irresistible. I need to meet you in person, Stephen finally declared after 2 months of daily conversations. I can no longer imagine my life without you. Amira hesitated, or seemed to hesitate. But what about your family? I don't want to cause any trouble. I'll take care of that, Stephen promised with no idea how. I just need to be sure of my feelings. I need to see you. And so Stephen made up the lie about Hamburg. He bought tickets to Tunis. He booked a hotel in the historic center of the Medina. He was about to cross a line from which there would be no turning back. At the Bremen airport, as Petra kissed him goodbye, Stephen felt a moment of hesitation. He looked at his wife's familiar face, the expression lines he knew so well, the eyes that had accompanied him for almost 3 decades. For a second he thought about confessing everything, canceling the trip, returning to the safety of the familiar. But then his phone vibrated. A message from Amira: "I can't wait to meet you, my dear. Get ready for the adventure of a lifetime." Stefan smiled, kissed Petra one last time as the man he had been, and boarded the plane to become someone else. 3 hours later, when the plane landed in Tunis, Stefan Miller had no idea he was walking into a carefully constructed trap. He didn't know that Amira Hassan wasn't who she claimed to be. He didn't suspect that every word, every photo, every promise had been calculated by a professional network of criminals specializing in exploiting men just like him. And he certainly couldn't have imagined that in a few weeks he would be chained in a basement in the Algerian desert, being offered as a slave to traffickers crossing the Sahara. But all that was yet to come. At that moment, walking through Tunis airport with a suitcase full of expensive gifts and his heart racing, Stefan Muller still believed he was living the great romance of his life. The heat of Tunisia enveloped Stefan like a suffocating embrace as soon as he left the airport. It was almost 90 degrees, a temperature that contrasted sharply with the 45 degrees he had left behind in Bremen. He loosened his tie, feeling sweat begin to form on his forehead. Stefan, over here." He turned his head and saw her. Amira was even more beautiful in person. She wore a turquoise dress that highlighted her eyes, her dark hair falling in waves over her shoulders. She ran toward him with a spontaneity that made him instantly forget the fatigue of the trip. "You really came," she whispered as she hugged him, and Stefan smelled the jasmine perfume she was wearing. "I was afraid you'd change your mind." "Never," Stefan replied, surprised by his own conviction. "Not after everything we talked about." Amira took his hand naturally, intertwining her fingers with his. The simple gesture made Stefan's heart race. How long had it been since Petra had held his hand like that? "Come, my taxi is waiting. I'll show you my city." The taxi drove through the streets of Tunis while Amira pointed out sights, told stories and laughed at her own jokes. Stefan could barely pay attention to her words. He was mesmerized by her physical presence, by the tangible reality of something that for 2 months had existed only on screens. "You're staying at the Dar el Medina Hotel, right?" Amira asked. "It's beautiful, but it's in the heart of the old Medina. Very touristy. I thought maybe, I prepared a surprise." "What kind of surprise?" "My family is traveling this week. I have an apartment all to myself. I thought we could have dinner there tonight. Real homemade Tunisian food, not that tourist restaurant stuff. What do you think?" Stefan should have felt some alarm. A 52-year-old married man in a foreign country being invited to the apartment of a woman he knew only virtually. But all he felt was gratitude. That would be perfect. The hotel was truly spectacular. White walls decorated with traditional blue tiles, an inner courtyard with a murmuring fountain, the scent of mint tea wafting through the air. Stefan checked in quickly, left his suitcase in the room, and returned to find Amira waiting in the lobby. "First, I'll show you some special places," she said, taking his hand again. "Places only the locals know." The next few hours were a delightful blur. Amira took him through vibrant markets where merchants shouted offers in Arabic and French. She showed him an ancient mosque where filtered light created hypnotic patterns on the marble floor. They bought fresh dates from a vendor who called her by name, suggesting she was indeed well known there. Every detail seemed to authenticate Amira's story. She translated conversations, explained customs, introduced Stefan as a German friend to people they met. Everything seemed genuine. Everything seemed real. As the sun began to set, painting the sky orange and purple, Amira guided him through narrow streets to a modest 4-story building. "This is it," she said, suddenly seeming shy. "It's not much, but it's mine." The apartment on the 3rd floor was small but cozy, decorated with colorful rugs, embroidered cushions, family photographs on the walls. Stefan recognized Amira in several photos. A smiling child, a serious teenager, a young woman graduating from university. "That's my mother," Amira pointed to a veiled woman in one of the photos. "She's complicated, very traditional. She wouldn't understand you and me." "What about your father?" "He died 3 years ago. Cancer." Her voice softened. "That's when everything changed. My mother wants me to marry the son of a friend of his, a man I don't even know well." "That's why." She looked at Stefan with shining eyes. "That's why you're so important. You represent choice, freedom." Stefan pulled her into an embrace. He felt like a hero, a liberator. He couldn't see that he was being studied, catalogued, prepared. Amira prepared an elaborate dinner: couscous with lamb, machia salad, crispy brique pastries. She served French red wine, explaining that she saved it for special occasions that her religious family would not approve. But I'm not as traditional as they think, she said, filling Stefan's glass for the third time. I believe in living life to the fullest, you know. Life is too short. They talked for hours. Amira asked questions about Stefan's life, showing genuine interest in every detail. She touched his arm when she laughed, her eyes never leaving his, creating a bubble of intimacy that made the rest of the world disappear. Can I ask you something personal? Amira said eventually, her hand finding his on the table. Anything. Your wife, does she know about us? Stefan felt a tightness in his chest. No, she thinks I'm in Hamburg for work. And do you feel guilty? I don't know. Should I? Amira squeezed his hand. Stefan, sometimes life gives us second chances, opportunities to be who we really are, not who others need us to be. There's no shame in seeking happiness. They were exactly the words Stefan needed to hear. Permission, absolution, justification. I keep wondering, Amira continued, her voice low and intimate, what it would be like if you could stay. Not just this week. Forever. Amira, I know it's crazy, but ever since we started talking, I can't stop imagining a life with you. Traveling, seeing the world together. You could work from anywhere with your experience. I could finally leave Tunisia, study in Europe like I've always dreamed of. Stefan felt the future unfolding before him. A new life, adventure, passion, everything he had lost or perhaps never had. It could be possible, he murmured. I have savings, my pension. We could. Amira kissed him before he could finish his sentence. It was a long, intense kiss that made Stefan forget Bremen and Petra and 28 years of marriage. When they parted, she had tears in her eyes. You make me believe that dreams can come true, she whispered. Stefan spent the night in the apartment. Amira prepared the sofa with blankets and pillows, insisting that they weren't ready for more, that they needed to do things right. This touch of propriety, of respect, only intensified Stefan's feelings. The following mornings, the pattern repeated itself. Amira showed him the city during the day. They had dinner in the apartment at night, talking late into the night about the impossible future they were beginning to build. Each day, Stefan moved further away from his previous life. Each night, the plan solidified a little more. It was on the fourth day that Amira introduced the first real problem. Stefan, I need to tell you something, she said during dinner, looking nervous. Remember I told you about my mother wanting me to marry my father's friend's son? Yes. They've set the engagement ceremony. It's in 2 weeks. Tears ran down her face. I don't want his Stefan. I don't love this man. But if I refuse, my family will disinherit me. Kick me out. Here, for a woman alone without family, it's impossible. Stefan felt panic and determination simultaneously. Then come with me now. Let's go to Germany together. It's not that simple. I need a visa, documents, and my mother controls my passport, my documents. She's afraid I'll run away. Amira held his hands desperately. There is a way, but no, forget it. I can't ask that of you. Tell me. Anything. There's a lawyer. He can get the documents quickly with contacts at the embassy, but he charges a lot. 5,000 euros. I don't have that kind of money. My salary as a teacher barely covers the rent. Stefan didn't hesitate. I have it. I'll pay. No, I can't accept that. Amira, I want to do this. I want to help you.
Hello guys, if you'd like to support our team that brings you the best true crime stories every week, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps us keep going. And we'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. Thank you for being with us and enjoy the rest of the video.
I want us to be together. She hugged him, sobbing against his chest. Are you sure? It's a lot of money. I'm absolutely sure. What Stefan didn't see was the quick glance Amira cast at the camera hidden in the bookcase. What he didn't notice was the subtle smile of satisfaction before she recomposed her expression of gratitude. What he didn't know was that in an office 3 blocks away, 3 men were watching everything on monitors, taking notes, planning their next steps. The trap was closing and Stefan Muller, blinded by passion and dreams of redemption, was walking straight into it. Stefan woke up feeling like he was doing the right thing for the first time in decades. Transferring 5,000 euros to an unknown lawyer in a foreign country should have worried him. But all he felt was relief. He was finally taking action, taking control of his life. Amira arrived at the hotel at 10 o'clock in the morning, beaming. It's all set. The lawyer said he can have the documents ready in 3 days. Stefan, this is really happening. They celebrated with breakfast on a terrace overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. The sun shone on turquoise waters. Seagulls dived for fish. And Stefan allowed himself to imagine that this could be his life. Freedom, beauty, new beginnings. Today I want to take you to a special place, Amira said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Sidi Bou Said, a village in the mountains. It's the most romantic place in Tunisia. They say that couples who go there together stay connected forever. The taxi ride took 40 minutes. Stefan watched the landscape change from the urban bustle of Tunis to green hills dotted with centuries-old olive trees. Amira talked animatedly about the history of the region, but Stefan barely listened. He was busy mentally planning how he would tell Petra everything, how he would explain it to his children, how he would rebuild his life. Sidi Bou Said was exactly as Amira had promised. Narrow alleys lined with white houses with cobalt blue doors and windows. Pink bougainvillea spilling over walls. The scent of jasmine permeating the air. Tourists took selfies. Artists sold paintings. Traditional music floated from hidden cafes. "Come, there's a cafe here that serves the best mint tea in the world," Amira said, guiding him through a crowd of visitors. The Café de Nats was packed. They found a table in the corner decorated with colorful mosaics. Amira ordered tea and sweets in Arabic, then turned to Stefan with a serious expression. "I need to tell you something important." Her tone made Stefan's stomach tighten. "What? Did something happen with the documents?" "No, it's not that. It's about us, about the future." She took a deep breath. "Stefan, I love you. I know it seems fast, but it's true. You're everything I've ever wanted in a man." Stefan felt warmth rise in his chest. "I love you too, Amira. Then I need to ask you something important." She took his hands. "When we get to Germany, we'll need to get married quickly so I can get a permanent visa. Would you do that? Would you marry me?" Stefan blinked, processing. Marriage meant divorce first. It meant dividing assets with Petra, facing his children's disappointment, destroying the image he had built over decades. "I know it's a lot to ask," Amira continued, seeing his hesitation. "But without marriage I can't stay in Germany. They'll deport me and then my family will force me into this arranged marriage and I—" Her voice broke. "I'd rather die than live like that." "Don't say that." Stefan squeezed her hands. "I'll do whatever it takes. Yes, I'll marry you." Amira smiled through her tears. "You make me so happy. But there's one more thing." She paused as if struggling to find the words. "The lawyer said he needs more money to speed up the process at the German embassy. Another 3,000 euros. Something in Stefan's brain flashed a faint warning. 8,000 euros in total. Was a lot. But looking at Amira's face, at the genuine tears, at the vulnerability in her eyes, the warning fell silent. "All right, I'll transfer it today." "Are you sure?" "I swear I'll pay you back everything when I start working in Germany. Every cent. I don't want you to pay me back. I want us to be partners. What's mine is yours." They spent the rest of the day exploring Sidi Bou Said. They took photos hugging each other, shared sugary desserts, planned for the future. Stefan called Petra in the evening from the balcony of his hotel room, making up stories about tedious meetings in Hamburg while watching the sunset over Tunis. "You sound different," Petra said on the other end of the line. "Your voice is, I don't know, lighter." "Just tired," Stefan lied. "Too much work." After hanging up, he transferred another 3,000 euros to the account Amira had given him. 8,000 euros in 5 days. A fortune. But what was money compared to true love, to a new beginning, to redemption? The next day, Amira showed up at the hotel agitated. "We have a serious problem." "What?" "My cousin found out about us. He told my mother." She paced back and forth, visibly nervous. "She's furious. She threatened to go to the police to say that you're seducing me, that you're much older. Here, that could land you in jail, Stefan. The laws are different." Panic seized him. "What do we do?" "We need to leave Tunis now. I know a safe place in the south, near Tozeur, a farm owned by a family friend. We can stay there until the documents are ready, then fly straight from there to Germany." "What if your mother has already alerted the police?" "That's why we need to leave today." "No." She held his shoulders. "Stefan, trust me. I'll protect you. But we need money for the trip, to hide. Do you have any more?" The alarm went off again, louder now. But the fear of imprisonment in a foreign country was greater. "How much?" 2,000 euros for transportation, lodging, bribes if necessary. Stefan was starting to sweat. 10,000 euros in total. But the alternative was prison. International scandal, complete destruction. He transferred the money. 2 hours later, they were in a car driving south. Amira was at the wheel, Stefan beside her, watching the urban landscape give way to desert. The driver was a large silent man whom Amira introduced as Rashid, "My trusted cousin." "How long until Tozeur?" Stefan asked. 6 hours, Amira replied. "Try to rest." Stefan closed his eyes, exhausted. When he woke up, it was night. They were no longer on the main road. The car was traveling on a dirt road with no lighting and no other buildings in sight. "Where are we?" Stefan asked, feeling the first real chill of fear. Almost there, Amira said. Her voice sounded different, colder. The car stopped in front of a low, isolated concrete building. No picturesque farm, no cozy refuge, just gray walls and unlit windows. Amira, what is this place? She turned to him. The face he had loved was now completely devoid of emotion. The place where foolish men pay for what they owe. The car door opened. Rashid pulled Stefan out with brutal force. Two other men emerged from the shadows. Amira, what's going on? Stefan shouted, trying to resist. You were too easy, Stefan, she said, lighting a cigarette with utter indifference. Middle-aged man, dull marriage, pathetic need for validation. You're all the same. They dragged him into the building. Stefan fought, screamed, begged. It was no use. The metal door slammed behind him with a sound that echoed like the end of everything. 10,000 euros. His dignity, his innocence. All for an illusion sold by professionals who knew exactly the weaknesses of men like him. But that was only the beginning. The real nightmare was about to begin. The cold concrete floor tore the skin off Stefan's knees when they threw him into the dark room. The metal door slammed shut, leaving only a sliver of light coming in from underneath. He tried to get up, but his legs shook violently. Help! Someone! He shouted until his throat burned. No one answered, only the silence of the desert. Hours passed, maybe a whole day. Stefan had lost track of time. Thirst burned his throat. Hunger twisted his stomach. But worst of all was the paralyzing terror of not knowing what was to come. The door finally opened. Bright light momentarily blinded Stefan. When his eyes adjusted, he saw three men entering. None of them were Rashid. The man in front was short, stocky, with a scar running across his face from forehead to chin. He looked Stefan over as if assessing merchandise. German, right? He said in heavily accented English. Good age. Still strong. Can work. Work. What are you talking about? I have money. I can pay more. Just let me go. The scarred man laughed. It was a humorless sound. You already paid, idiot. 10,000 euros. Good starting price, but now you're worth more as a product. Product? Horror began to solidify in Stefan's mind. Human trafficking, my friend. Welcome to the business. The man lit a cigarette. You'll cross the border into Algeria tomorrow. There are farms in the desert that need workers. 5 years of service. Maybe you'll buy your freedom. Maybe not. Stefan felt the world spin. You can't do this. I'm a German citizen. They'll look for me. Look for you? The man laughed again. Your wife thinks you're in Hamburg. When she finds out the truth, she'll think you ran off with your mistress. There is no Stefan Muller here. You no longer exist. The truth fell on him like lead. No one knew where he was. His tracks were all false. He had erased himself. Amira planned everything from the beginning. Stefan muttered more to himself than anyone else. Amira? The man spat on the floor. That's not even her real name. Her name is Salma. She's been working for us for 3 years. She's brought us 17 men. You're just another fool. They handcuffed him and threw him into a truck with 4 other men. 2 looked like sub-Saharan Africans. 1 was Asian. Another could have been European. They all shared the same look, utter despair. Where are we going? Stefan asked the man next to him in English. Sahara, he replied in a hoarse voice. Clandestine farms, slave labor. I was trying to get to Europe. I ended up here. The truck crossed the border at night via deserted routes that no map showed. Guards were paid off. Documents weren't even checked. Stefan understood the horrible efficiency of that criminal machine. At dawn, they arrived at a structure that looked more like a prison than a farm. High fences, armed men, barracks where dozens of people lived in subhuman conditions. A middle-aged Arab man welcomed them. He examined each one, checking muscles and teeth as if buying cattle. This one is old, he said, pointing to Stefan. How much? 3,000 euros, replied the driver. 1,500. He won't last 2 years in this sun. They negotiated as if Stefan were an object. He was sold for 2,000 euros, less than a used car, less than his savings which he had voluntarily handed over. They brought him to the barracks. You work in the fields 12 hours a day, 2 meals, water when you deserve it. Try to escape and you die in the desert. Understand? Stefan couldn't answer. He just cried. That night, lying on a filthy mattress next to other slaves, Stefan thought of Petra, of Lucas and Emma, of the comfortable life in Bremen that he had destroyed out of sheer stupidity. He thought of the roses he used to grow, the wine he shared with Petra, the little joys he had taken for granted. And he realized too late that happiness was never about passion or adventure. It was about appreciating what you already had before you lost it forever. Petra Muller was worried. Stefan should have returned from Hamburg on Thursday night, but he had called to say that the meeting had been extended and that he would be back on Saturday. Something in his voice sounded strange, distant, different. She tried calling him in the morning. The phone went straight to voicemail. She tried again at noon. Nothing. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, her concern turned into silent panic. Petra called Stefan's company. The secretary answered in her usual professional tone. "Good morning, Mrs. Muller. How can I help you? I need to talk to Stefan. It's urgent." "But Stefan is on vacation this week. Didn't he tell you?" Petra's world stopped. "Vacation? He told me he was in Hamburg on business." Awkward silence on the other end. "Frau Muller, Stefan requested a week's vacation 2 weeks ago. He said you were going to travel together." Petra hung up with trembling hands. A lie. Stefan had lied about everything. But why? Where had he gone? With whom? She rushed to his home office looking for clues. She searched through drawers, papers, bank statements. She found them hidden under a pile of old documents. International transfers. 10,000 euros sent to an account in Tunisia over the course of a week. Tunisia. Stefan was in Tunisia, not in Hamburg. With trembling fingers, Petra opened his laptop. The password was Emma's date of birth. He had never changed it. She checked the browser history. International dating sites, conversations in English and German with someone named Amira Hassan, months of messages, declarations of love, promises of a future together. Petra felt nausea rising. 28 years of marriage destroyed by a stranger on the internet. But the nausea quickly gave way to something else. Fear. The latest messages were strange. Stefan talking about lawyers, urgent documents, money being transferred hastily. She printed everything out and called Lucas. "Mom, what happened?" His voice sounded alarmed when he heard her tone. "Your father, he's not in Hamburg. He's in Tunisia with a woman. And he transferred 10,000 euros. I need your help." Lucas arrived in an hour with Emma. Together, they analyzed the evidence. The initial romantic messages, Amira's promises, the progressive requests for money. The pattern was obvious to an outside observer. "Mom, this is a classic scam," said Lucas, his engineering background making him analytical even under emotional stress. "Romance scam. They seduce men, ask for money, then disappear." "But why isn't he answering?" Petra held her cell phone like a lifeline. "It's been over 24 hours. Emma, more pragmatic than her brother, was already on the phone with the police. "I need to report a missing person." "Yes, a German citizen in Tunisia. Possible fraud." "No, I don't have his exact location." The police officer on the other end didn't seem alarmed. "Frau Muller, your father is an adult. He may have decided to extend his trip. There is no evidence of a crime. He transferred 10,000 euros to a stranger. Isn't that enough evidence? If he did it voluntarily, it's not a crime." "I'm sorry, but we have to wait 48 hours before opening a formal investigation." Emma hung up, frustrated. "They're not going to help." "Not yet." Petra looked at her children. She saw in them the same determination she felt growing inside herself. Stefan may have betrayed her trust and destroyed her marriage, but he was still their father and he was in danger. "Then we'll go ourselves," she said firmly. "We're going to Tunisia." Lucas blinked in surprise. "Mom, you don't even have a valid passport." "Yes, I do. I renewed it last year for that conference in Paris." Petra was already mentally packing her bags. "Emma, can you get time off from college to save Dad from his own stupidity?" "I can." 12 hours later, the three of them were on a flight to Tunis. Petra didn't sleep. She reviewed the messages hundreds of times, looking for any clue as to his location. Amira had mentioned an apartment, specific markets, a cafe in Sidi Bou Said. It wasn't much, but it was something. They arrived at the Tunis airport on Sunday morning. The North African light was intense, almost violent. Petra felt completely out of place. A 50-year-old German math teacher looking for her unfaithful husband in an unfamiliar country. They rented a car and went straight to the local police. A detective named Karim Ben Ali received them. He listened to the story with an increasingly somber expression. "Amira Hassan, you say?" He checked the name on the computer. "There is no one registered with that name in Tunis. But she sent photos, showed documents." Petra showed him the saved images. Karim studied the photos. "These are from a stock photo site. Look here. This same photo appears on 3 different dating sites with different names." He sighed heavily. "Your husband has fallen into an organized network. They've been doing this for years. They seduce, extract money. Then, well, it depends." "Depends on what?" Emma's voice was sharp. "Whether the victim still has value. Your father transferred 10,000 euros. That's a lot. But if they found out he has more, they may have kept him for further extraction. He paused. Or what? Petra felt her blood run cold. Human trafficking. They sell them into slave labor in the Sahara, usually foreigners that no one will look for. But we're looking. Lucas slammed his hand on the table. Exactly. That could save him. Karim picked up the phone. I'll contact Interpol. Activate the informant network, but be realistic. He could be anywhere between here and Algeria. That's a lot of territory. The following days were torture. Petra and her children stayed in a cheap hotel waiting for news. Karim called with minimal updates. He checked hospitals. He checked flight records. He questioned acquaintances in the underworld. Nothing. It was Emma who had the crucial idea. The messages mention a specific cafe in Sidi Bou Said, Café de Nats. What if we go there? What if someone recognizes Dad or this fake Amira? They went. Petra showed Stefan's photo to waiters, vendors, and locals. Most just shook their heads, but a street artist, an elderly man selling paintings, looked longer. I saw that man last week with a young, beautiful woman. They took pictures there. He pointed to a specific spot. The woman? Do you know her? The artist frowned. I've seen her before with different men, always older tourists, always the same story. Romance photos, then they disappear. Do you know her name? Where she lives? Not her real name, but I know she works for a group from the south. Smugglers. They have a base near the Algerian border. Finally, a real lead. Petra called Karim immediately. He listened, took notes, then said something that changed everything. I have a contact at the border. He recorded an illegal crossing 3 days ago. A truck with 5 men, one of them a middle-aged European. Could be your husband. Where are they now? If they followed the usual route, they're on a clandestine farm in the Algerian desert. But Frau Muller, I have to be honest. Rescues there are dangerous. These men are armed and violent. It's not like calling the police in Bremen. Petra looked at her sons. She saw determination in both their eyes. She thought of Stefan, foolish, unfaithful, pathetic Stefan, chained up in some hellhole in the desert. I don't care about the danger, she said. We're going to get him today. The desert sun burned Stefan's skin as he carried 50-pound sandbags under the watchful eye of armed guards. 4 days of slave labor had turned his hands into raw flesh. Every movement was agony. Faster, German, shouted the foreman, hitting his back with a stick. Stefan staggered but kept going. Beside him, the African man he had met on the truck collapsed from exhaustion. The guards didn't even approach him. They left him there under the scorching sun as a warning. That night in the stinking barracks, an older man whispered in German, "You're new here. You still have hope in your eyes." Stefan looked at him. His face was skeletal, sunburned, his eyes sunken. "How long have you been here? 7 years or 8? I've lost count." He coughed, a wet, sickly sound. "I came here thinking I'd work for 2 years and buy my freedom. It's a lie. No one gets out. There must be a way. There was an Italian. He tried to escape. They found him 3 days later dead of thirst 5 kilometers from here. The vultures had already started. The man spat blood. This desert is our